the last session is probably one very close to my heart, I should say. We have a word survey on consumer trust. Turns out that the topic that is closest to the concerns of users worldwide, including the US, is privacy, is their and it's not just that. My passwords, the question of authenticating themselves. So we probably might have seen some of the biggest problems to solve. We heard this morning from Tweety as well, later on from Brian, how the phone numbers and the same authentication are so clear. So if you're looking at some of the innovations, look at those, look at some of those three companies, we might hear great things about. Now, Rob might try to sex up the title. I was the author of that. But actually, there is not much sexing that needs there. Just like the key questions on identity, privacy, that we've seen before. It's probably time for us to take a little break and rethink of how we identify the key messaging word, because until now it was P2P or A2P. You either talking person to person, all would be the same, or it was an application first. It was a business sending something like this. Now, these two gentlemen here are here probably to challenge us, and let's see how convincing they can be, because they're saying that actually there are more use cases out there, and sometimes in a different situation you have employee communication can be very, very different in terms of legal communication, in terms of privacy, in terms of also of a critical, very important management situation. So, Harsh again, well, thank you. You are for two competing solutions, I should say, probably. From one side, we have Harsh representing NetSfere, and then BlackBerry. So Ken, you are the GM of Apple. And it's something special, I should say, BlackBerry has changed in the last few years as well, quite a bit. Can you give us a bit more of a use case, of the reason why people here should be super excited about hearing about this sort of messaging? What is critical messaging or employee compliance? Let's start with Ken. Give us some examples, and let's see if some of you will jump with excitement.
Great. No, that's fantastic. So, before I start though, raise your hand if you've used a BlackBerry device. Fewer than I actually expected. Okay, that's just aging the population, demographics. So, most of you, if you've used BlackBerry, you know that we've been involved in messaging in one way, shape, or form. From the original devices, the Crackberries, whatever you want to call them. But actually, what you might not know is we were in messaging even before cellular service. We actually originated as a pager company, right? So, even earlier messaging. And we've continued that, although I apologize, we don't make devices anymore. We moved on from that. But we are still heavily involved in the concept of messaging, the concept of communicating, right, which is what I think we're all here for today. And so one of the areas that we look at from a communication perspective now, which I look after, is the crisis management or crisis communications. So you asked a use case there, okay? So what you may not know is Dario actually, when he's not working for MEF, he also runs a oil and gas company. Okay?
As you can see.
And he has a number of employees, and he has to make sure that oil and gas, out in the rigs, out in the Gulf, there's a hurricane coming right now, right? So you probably want to take care of it. You have a duty of trust, right? So you need to find a way when there's maybe an explosion in a refinery or a fire or something along those lines. You need to be able to, first of all, message out to them very quickly, give them some emergency message, maybe evacuate, maybe it's time to leave, the hurricane is coming. Then you need to follow up and identify are they safe? And if they're not safe, then you need to inform emergency services and get them to come along. And that whole pipeline is what crisis communications are. So it can be either as a business or a government or a large organization supporting employees, or it can be a community supporting your citizens. So for example, I live in the Dallas area, and there's a lot of tornadoes that run through the Dallas area. There's a klaxon right behind my house that goes off. Raise your hand if you've heard the klaxons go off, right? What do you do when you hear those klaxons going off? Mine goes off all the time. Hail, rain, maybe they're just testing it on Tuesdays. I run into my house and I turn on the TV and I try to figure out what's the local TV channel, because CNN isn't going to be saying that there's a tornado coming through Allen, Texas. So I find a local television station, and then hopefully they're showing the weather, and hopefully they're telling me that I should take cover. The county or the city can send a message to me specifically for my neighborhood, not the city, not the state, but this street. Take shelter. This is serious. You need to do something. So that's crisis communications.
Thank you. So, Harsh, can you add something from your side? What is this form of alternative communications? So it's not person to person. Who are you talking to? Why do they use different services?
So, before I do that, you mentioned that we are going to challenge older use cases or the current use cases. So I just want to say that I love those use cases too, because that's what we do from a company's perspective. I'm specifically here to talk about this topic, but just a quick introduction of our services. We were formed in 2010 as a result of spin-off and acquisition of Motorola's messaging assets. And after that, we also acquired Nokia's and Alcatel-Lucid's messaging assets. So today, all those big three messaging assets, including their customers' requirements, are all consolidated with us. And the scale of deployment is global. Our emergency broadcast system, which is deployed by the operators, we have 100% of the market. So if you do get Amber alerts on your phone, they all come from our deployments. And on the enterprise side, we also have a B2B omni-channel platform. We talked about that a lot today. And we also have an RCS platform. And in fact, we were the first few ones initially to deploy RCS.
I'm so sorry.
That's
Could
one
you just
topic.
put the microphone near your mouth, because everyone really wants to hear what you're saying and they can't hear back. Thank you so much.
Try, that works. Okay, just in case you didn't hear me earlier, I will not repeat myself. So jumping to your question, Daniel, what are we really talking about when we talk about secure messaging applications for deployment? So it's really got to do with the digital workplace today, right? The workplace has gone digital and it has accelerated phenomenally. Purely driven by mobile, cloud applications, and the availability of bandwidth. And of course, we should not forget messaging, because messaging has become a de facto way of communicating. And what has happened over the years, past few years, is that a lot of the business communication, which was on compliant enterprise-grade platforms, has moved to consumer messaging platforms like WhatsApp. Like WhatsApp is everywhere. Now, what can happen if you use a consumer-grade platform? Right? What happens is you can either breach your data privacy requirements, or you can be completely non-compliant with regulatory requirements, and that can result in not only fines, like from the government or from the SEC, but loss of privacy and trust with your consumers and customers. And if you're not aware of that, I would say, I was thinking of a use case that I can present, but I was just checking the news, and if you just Google WhatsApp and banks, you will see that SEC is going to fine $2 billion for all the US banks that they have listed for just using WhatsApp consumer-grade messaging platform, because they know they have exactly compromised not only the regulatory requirements, but also the data and privacy of their own customers. Just look it up, you will see that, right? So this is not a new problem from our point of view. Like, we have seen this problem for many years. Like you and I have been talking, we have been engaged with Anurag too, and it's just that that has become now more real time than it was ever before.
Talking about some of the things we've done in the past as well, we've asked people, we did consumer surveys. And two things I remember we discussed in the past. The first one is that email is not, in most countries, the major business communication channel. Actually, messaging is. And surprisingly, SMS definitely is, but other platforms to share documents, to share pictures, to share fantastic, richness of WhatsApp, the OTT of this world, I shouldn't say RCS. And that has also brought up new questions. Who owns the data? How do you manage this person, personally in the company, and so on? And all of that has been already captured by users, and users asking some of those questions and reflecting on that. They don't know if their message is secure. They don't know how to interface with that company. Yet, you don't think at all that your hospital is going to be using a public messages or the information will be shared somewhere else, or that your bank shares your information somewhere. How do we make sure that that level of integrity in data is maintained?
Let me give you a quick example, and then I'll answer your question. Like Ravi mentioned, email was a way to go, right? For enterprise communication. Why? Because it's provided by the enterprise, and your company provides you an identity based on behalf of which you can communicate. Now, what happens is, when you don't provide the messaging has become so ubiquitous that if you don't provide messaging tools compliant, employees will start communicating on the consumer messaging apps. Case in point, one quick example, a few years back, one of our big customers, they have customer account teams global, and they are involved in a lot of pre-sale activities. They are bidding over multiple RFPs worth billions of dollars. And what they did was, instead of creating a group in their email, they created a group, a WhatsApp group, so that they can collaborate, exchange intelligence information across all regions, and thought maybe more competitive like when they are bidding. So what happens over a period of time, and it's not much, within 3 to 6 months, they lost 3 or 4 people on their teams. And they did go, and when people leave, they did go and join competitors. But the IT, the HR had no insight into what was going on that group application, or group conversation. And nobody noticed that these guys had already left because it was a globally scattered team. And they were still sharing a lot of confidential information, so the loss of which cannot even be quantified. But then they had to ban mobile messaging. The first thing they did was ban mobile messaging, which the CTO did not want to do that, because that's what they do. CTO enables their employees with technology. So that's one example. Now, what we do is, when it comes to, so we have our NetSfere enterprise application, which was built from the ground up, because we had recognized that problem. And we knew our customers were asking for that particular application. So it was built from the ground up to be absolutely secure, end-to-end encrypted, and also built with all the administrative controls and mandates you need to be compliant, whether it's GDPR, whether it's HIPAA requirements, or whether it's requirement for Sarbanes Oxley and Ox for financial institutions. And So when I tried to explain to customers earlier, now they get it. Earlier it was very simple, right? It's a WhatsApp for enterprises, right? Where WhatsApp does not own your data. You do not own your platform. You own your platform, you own your data. Your IT manages it, and you are completely secure and compliant. And your data cannot be shared by anybody else unless they want it themselves. So you control all your data. And so we have seen a lot of traction, especially in healthcare, because that's where it's very critical, and now in financial institutions. And this WhatsApp problem has been more prevalent in Europe, where it was recognized because of GDPR earlier. And I think in the US, it's the first time I've heard in the last few weeks when SEC decided to fine close to $2 billion to about 8 or 10 banks in the US.
So this must be a market which probably needs to reconsider its importance. If there is a $2 billion charge, that's already makes everything we do, I guess, a $2 billion worth for one market. And Ken, let's talk about it. Harsh was talking about hospitals and banks. So that's easy because they have compliance issues, they have data which is secure. Now for the critical messages, the crisis management issue, who's your customer?
So really, anyone can be a customer these days. Sadly, the world has become a more dangerous place, or at least it feels like it's a more dangerous place these days. Global warming, there's a lot of civil unrest over the last few years. We've had a pandemic. There's a war in Europe going on right now. So employers are feeling that the dangers that are maybe not just the normal business dangers, but external dangers have increased considerably. There's also cyber warfare, cyber crime, right? That's happening. So imagine, for example, if back to Dario, your oil company, no storms or anything, but you've had a hack. Okay, so you've had a cyber attack on your business. Your network's being brought down. Your workforce is spread out across the entire United States and Europe. A lot of people are working from home because they haven't come back from the pandemic. How do you tell them that there's been an issue and their network's down? They're home. He's at home, trying to do his job, trying to access the server. The server's down, it's not working. It doesn't matter what the hack is, it's just there's a hack. What's he going to do? He's going to call me, I'm his colleague. He's going to, okay, is your network down too? Yeah, my network's down too. What are you going to do? I'll call 1-800-GOT-HELP with the help desk. And guess what? Multiply that by 1,000. Your help desk suddenly gets overwhelmed, right? And they can't help. They'll just say, we have a problem. We have cyber alerting capabilities as one example. Okay, so one use case. So off your normal network, you send a message across multiple formats to your workforce saying whatever you wanted to say. You can send it very quickly. Please stand by. IT issue. We understand it. We got it. Come back in 10 minutes. Right? And come back to your message, which would then cause your employees to, or maybe don't turn on your machine, because sometimes when you have a cyber alert, just turning on your machine exacerbates the problem. Right? So that actually happened with the solar incident, cyber attack. So you can have that situation. So you have a cyber alerting capability. We talked about the fire, the physical emergencies that might happen, primarily heavy industry. But you also have policing and law enforcement. So I'll give you a real-time example. Sadly, the Queen passed away. There was Project London Bridge that happened, which was the Queen's funeral. One of our customers happens to be the Greater Manchester Police Department, and another one of our customers happens to be the National Crime Agency. So you can imagine policing was, we live in the UK, right? So the number of people here in the UK, probably the single largest policing event in the country's history. They had to activate people from all over. The Greater Manchester Police Department needed to activate a number of their police officers who might be on holidays, or might be on PTO, or whatever it might be, and get them down to London quickly because of this emergency event. They were able to do it using our service. Quickly messaging out, we need a volunteer, press 1 if you're interested, and we'll give you more information. Pushed it through their roughly 7,000 workforce. In 9 minutes, they had the volunteers that they needed. Whereas we talked to some other police forces, and they were saying, we wish we had this type of technology because it took us 9 hours to make the phone calls, call through the call tree, send emails, etc., etc., etc. So there's numerous use cases for this type of crisis messaging.
And by the way, let me talk to you as Dario who works in math. And just to let you know, we have about 20 bands, I think, as our members. And interestingly, 7 of them had a specific request on the side of our membership that we have a critical messaging to our employees plan. So we need to share a plan. What happens if something the offices. How do we collect them? Well done to the banks. Basically, they understand risk and compliance, which they are sure. You must be talking to them as well. Two of them included questions if we ever use messaging applications and what specific messaging application for sharing information. So I think, from my side, small company member, as you can imagine, on video, but we are actually asking these and many other questions dealing with banks. It's not very complicated. But definitely, I feel the benchmark is going to be higher. Something is starting. What would you like to ask these guys here from your side? You know, are these in front of you potential partners? Are they competitors? I'll ask you, Ken. What do you think that we should ask these people out there to change, to understand the applications of the industry?
I would say, first of all, do you, just as your own organizations, do you have a plan for a crisis? Or are you expecting that you'll figure it out when it happens? Everyone thinks they have a playbook for a plan until something bad happens, right? Regardless of what it might be, whether it's a tornado or hurricane, act of God. Unfortunately, in the school systems these days, and especially in this country, active shooters and the like, what's your plan to activate your employees, to message to your people, to whatever your stakeholders might be? How do you do that? So I guess that would be the first situation. The second point I would ask is, and I would throw this out to the carriers out there. So if you're a carrier, you're looking for new methods to monetize your systems. You're looking to monetize your 5G networks. You're looking for new value-added services. And you are a communication company. You should partner with companies like ours to help your customers to better communicate out in crisis. Those would be the items I would add.
And so, same question to you, what would you ask the people here? Or what would you tell them? What would you suggest?
So what I would say is that I think we have to, as the leaders in mobility and messaging, especially in this forum, I think we have an obligation to our customers to help them, guide them, like how the communication landscape is changing rapidly. And when it comes to the problem we are talking about, not enough solutions, I think it's a great opportunity for all of us who are in messaging to really help our customers with this problem, because they are relying on either unsecure applications or they are relying on consumer messaging platforms to communicate, and messaging is the number one medium of communication. And the way we recognize this problem is, I think first we ourselves have to agree or recognize. I think every one of us has been guilty of using applications which were not authorized by our IT or by our company, like employees. We use WhatsApp. I have done that. I don't do that anymore. I don't even use iMessage when I'm communicating with my customers, or if I'm communicating any confidential information, even with sales development teams or teams in Singapore. First of all, I should not be doing that. And the second reason is that I am not mandated to do that by the laws. So we infringe a lot of our own commitments that we make to our customers. And when it comes to data and privacy, we provide a big loophole. It was, I would say, still not that highlighted. It was still not that visible. But I think it's past 2-3 years, especially because of the acceleration that we all have seen from COVID, when the workers did go remote and the breaches occurred. If you look at the IBM data or data from McKinsey, the cost of breach has gone up 25% in the last 2 years, and purely driven by the 25% increase is purely driven by employees' use of messaging and collaboration apps, where it has kind of exponentially grown over the last 2 years. And again, if you go back to the same applications, it's Zoom, but it's Slack, which is not built for those compliances, and it's WhatsApp, right? So I would say, if you talk to every one of our customers, they need these kind of messaging applications, and we are in a position of strength, like as leaders, to go and help them with that.
So I think we'll have to later on ask you whether these critical messaging rate compliance should have a catchphrase. Is it E2E, employee, employer to employee, or is it what is it? And do we have a marketing issue? Is that something? Do we need to make more awareness? Is that what's missing? Kat, I see you're nodding. What do you think is a challenge for this category, which is not talked about very much?
The way I like to look at it is, and I come from a cybersecurity background as well, prior to joining this particular area, and I like to think of critical events management as kind of cybersecurity's baby brother. So if you think of cybersecurity, there's been cyber threats since any machine was built. Go back to the 70s and 60s, there was hacking always. But when did it become a board level topic? When did all of the huge cybersecurity companies that exist today really start to take off? It was when, first of all, Sony was hacked about a decade ago. And then quickly after that, when Target was hacked and they released a lot of their private information. And then organizations started to wake up from a cybersecurity perspective and say, this is important. The Chief Information Security Officer role, or CISO role, is talked about all the time now. That role didn't exist a decade ago. It's a new function that generally reports into the CEO. It doesn't exist. So it just happened that a major compelling event happened, and then cybersecurity became a board level topic. And I'm sure every company here, every individual is taking security training and trying to understand that. Crisis management communications is the same thing. It's just the baby brother. It's about 5 years after, but the world, all of these compelling events are starting to come into place. How did companies go about communicating during the pandemic when their workforce was all spread out? It was a little bit chaotic. They would send out emails. How do you communicate when there's a fire in your plant, or during the Capitol riots, for example, right, on January 6th, that terrible day in this country? How did organizations that were nothing to do with the government but happened to be around Capitol Hill, how do they inform their employees that maybe just don't come in today, right? Just stay at home. It's a little bit dangerous. It's a little bit crowded coming in. All of these things are happening more and more, and that's why it's pushing the TAM up, and it's an excellent opportunity for various companies to get involved in this space.
Josh, do you think that something could be done to give more visibility to this category?
From our forum perspective? Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good start to have that on the agenda, now that you have it. Right? So definitely, I would encourage that we have this as an agenda, because NEF does a really good job of highlighting those problems. And we've done great work with the SMS phishing problem. So it's really the same thing, because this is what opens the doors for cybersecurity threats. It's just not just compliance. The security is where, the loopholes are there, and they have been exploited. And if you look at the most recent one, which was with Uber, again it was through Slack. Right? So there are a lot of opportunities.
We have an ethical question here, so that the industry needs to look at the security and how seriously we look at stuff. I would say we also have a commercial and a business opportunity for many, because this could be your next category to monetize as well. So I think there is a double question. So as Matt, we're really happy. to look at that. I've been having fun asking other questions. And the time, I've got 4 seconds left, but the yes are good. We'll stand a bit longer, and we have 2 questions. We'll start here. Could you introduce yourself as well with your name and
Yes. Yeah, my name's Adam. I'm a messaging provider. So we get a fair amount of customers reaching out to us asking about critical communication, and it's a relatively small portion of our overall customer base. But I almost sort of see this from 2 camps. We've got sort of the day-to-day job notifications, but then there's the occasional critical emergency. Would we theoretically sort of split our volume with sort of a regular aggregator like a Twilio or a Bandwidth, and then push a portion of our messaging through an emergency communication provider like yourself? Is that a typical use case, or would we put all of that volume through you? Like, how can we work with you?
So we're not an aggregator. We're the service provider. So I like to think of us as a service provided by software that then generates messages. So our platform allows you to take whatever your message is and send it to your list of numbers or whatever it might be. And I should clarify, it's not just text messaging. We're omni communications. So back to Dario's oil refinery, right? There might be a guy or girl that's working there, and they don't have their devices and they have headphones on. We can activate the strobe lights remotely. So we integrate into thousands of types of devices to allow communication. So what your customers would do is you would point them to a company like ours, and we would set them up. We can do employees with 5 companies or 5 people up to 1 million employees, right? And be able to allow them to send out whatever type of message. From fire on the plant to cyber alert to just, hey, there's some traffic problems in this particular area. And we focus on making it easy to get the message, because when you're in a crisis, seconds count. You can't wait minutes. You have to get the message out in seconds.
Yeah, I just one follow-up question. I get that, but like, let's say I've got the city of Raleigh, right? And they've got sort of day-to-day non-emergency communication, which presumably we wouldn't route through you, because I'm sure you charge a premium for this. So would we theoretically sort of split our volume where most of the communication, say 90% is through that, and we put, say 5 or 10% through you, and you would go through different channels and presumably get delivered faster?
Actually, Raleigh is an excellent example because we're in the Raleigh-Durham airport, right? So we cooperate with the city in that particular situation. It could go either way. It could go directly with us, because then we would just aggregate it and send out through the aggregator. We don't try to make our money off the message cost from the carrier. We basically just pass that through. So we drive volume discounts and try to make it as cheap as possible for the city.
And what I found very compelling this morning when you and I were discussing over coffee, I realized that look, it's just not about notification. We provide real-time intelligence for people to take decisions, which, like in a critical communication, can save lives. And so it's much beyond just messages.
So I'm looking forward to seeing the future of how a partnership will let you work it out then. But we had one final question from Carlos.
Thank you, Carlos. That's still at BCW Global. Very, very interesting topic. As you were explaining this, the tornado watch, etc. So I was thinking, when I came here, I got a text from United telling me that my plane was boarding in 202 gate B52. So to me, that was like a contextual information SMS message. Like there's many use cases. The way you describe them, to me, it sounds like just a similar one, right? Whether it's United telling me go to gate B52 now, not 30 minutes from now, or somebody telling you there is a hurricane seek shelter, or the employee is getting a message, don't log out, we have a problem, we'll get back to you. It's the same service, different application, but the same technical use case. Is there something else specific to emergency that will make it different than United telling me that I'm working? And I'm thinking, for instance, of regulation, or like where the DLR, the delivery receipt, takes more value because you need to prove that whoever you informed was received it, etc. Is there something specific, or it's the same kind of use case?
So absolutely, because we're talking about saving lives here. So it's important that you got on your flight, you got your ticket, but it wasn't life-saving critical, right? So what we work with the aggregators, we work with the carriers to get us at the tier 1. So we push back other traffic. So for example, I'm sorry if there's anybody from Rogers in Canada here, but there was a meltdown of the Rogers network in Canada about 2 months ago. And so when we would send out messages, we were pushed to the top, right? Because that was a crisis communication. There was so many messages being sent out by Bell, but we got pushed to the top when our customers had to do stuff. So that's one example. So getting pushed to the top is one, but then also understanding the anatomy of a crisis is the incremental value add that we provide, right? So two-way, you're united, you're not texting back, right? You're just acknowledging. We send you a message saying, are you safe? Were you in the building? Press 1 if you're safe. Press 2, you're not in the neighborhood. Press 3, you're in the building and you need help immediately. That sort of thing, right? And we send it out in mass, we get it back in mass, and then we can identify that there's these 50 people that were in the refinery and we need to inform the emergency services. So it's omnipresent and bidirectional. Does that answer your question?
Okay, thank you.
I think I'm afraid, I suspect there might be more questions, but I better not ask because we're already run. I think that the red flashing light has been running for a while. Interesting topic. I did promise, and I think they did deliver. Thanks, Harsh. Thanks, Ken. I hope, and thank you for sharing two not so similar, but two competitors sharing the stage to show you how this is an important category. Thank you very much.